I'll plug your slides. Go ahead.
Good morning. While Mr. Rubin's pulling this up, just a quick show of hands. How many of you in the room are clinicians, physicians, nurses, etc.? And how many of you are like not clinicians at all, or pure business people or IT people? Great. So I'm hoping to speak to that second group, and I hope that the first group that I effectively capture what it is that what it is that we're trying to do. So background, I am very much new to the informatics community. I've only been an informaticist for about 2-3 years. My background is in clinical medicine, systems engineering, quality improvement, and even exists, first of all, is new to me and is incredibly exciting. Side note, that QR code, if you capture it, will give you all of my email information. So please feel free to email me. I'm happy to share my slides. I could talk about this literally for 2 days. Mr. Rubin said you have 10 minutes. So forgive me if this seems very much superficial, but I just wanted to give you a very brief glimpse into what I'm trying to capture. Standard federal disclaimer, similar to what Mr. Rubin said, although I am standing up here as a VHA individual. This is not an official policy doctrine. If I mention any products or companies, that does not necessarily represent an endorsement, official or otherwise, or criticism. And if we do end up talking about any patient safety stuff, anything that I talk about has been reviewed and is not restricted by our specific code. I picked 4. Specifically, the Choosing Wisely campaign. Show of hands, how many people are you familiar with the Choosing Wisely campaign? So you'll forgive me, for the rest of you, I'll briefly talk about it. The VA effort to transition from our in-house EHR system, built by many of you in this room, to an off-the-shelf system, some new regulations and complexities that are being imposed on healthcare in general and on the VA in particular, and some new imperatives and challenges that I think are going to be coming up. And these are, like I said, ones of immediate interest to me. I could pick literally 30 or 40 more. These are the ones that I went through. So the Choosing Wisely campaign is an initiative from the American Board of Internal Medicine, which is to de-implement, to stop the use of inappropriate medical practices and procedures that have been shown to not improve quality, safety, or value. It's been a very strong effort, and they've been doing it really in every specialty. If you literally Google just Choosing Wisely, you can see subspecialty information for dozens of specialties: endocrine, cardiology, general internal medicine, emergency medicine. I am, of course, as I mentioned, an intensivist. So I just picked what's the state of the art within our field. So this was published literally last month. So a large national survey of clinicians. Only 50% of clinical people who responded to the survey said that they were even familiar with the Choosing Wisely campaign. This after concerted effort by the American College of Chest Physicians, the American Thoracic Society, and the Society for Critical Care Medicine to actively campaign. Half of our clinicians did not know about this incredibly important multi-million-dollar effort. Of those that did say familiar, that they showed that only 65% of them actually had protocols to implement it. About 60% had some sort of order set, and 20% had the dreaded dashboard that Dr. Ginsburg, you and I were talking about, that no clinician really wants to see, about how bad you're doing. And in patient safety, it brings up the fundamental concept of what we call the spilled milk issue. How many of you have had a toddler at home or have one at home, a 2-year-old? You can yell at them, you can try to teach them not to spill their milk. At the end of the day, they've got those really great cups, the sippy cups with the lids on them, and so that if they tip their cup of milk, they don't spill their milk. At some point in time, they will learn the skill set and the mechanical needs and the fine motor coordination so that they don't spill it. But the engineering solution is really just better. And this particular publication just commented that, quote unquote, additional strategies, without specifying what those are needed to promote the Choosing Wisely recommendations to have impactful change to improve care in ICU settings. So that's the state of the art. Despite 10 years of strong effort, we are not able to really achieve even 50%, right? So the Ballast study from 1999, 2000, that showed that it takes 17 years to implement a best practice guideline. There's no study out there that talks about de-implementation, but what we're seeing is that at the very least it's taking more than 10, and it's probably going to take a lot more. So this is, of course, the work that I've been doing for the last year. I've been detailed. My detail just ended. I've returned it to NCPS. I'm still working on EHR with some of our leaders, Jonathan, Dr. Nemberger in the back, one of our lead people from the Office of Health Informatics. Welcome. So the promise here, really outstanding stuff. Seamless care for our 8 million people in uniform and formally in uniform across the Department of Defense and VA. Standardization of practice. And most importantly, for this group, a better ability to compare as the VA transitions from a provider of care to a purchaser of care, enabled to compare apples and oranges to apples and apples with non-VA care, which raises, as Ken, Mr. Rubin had said, it really brings up a whole bunch of other questions. So what does standardization look like? And how does the VA, which has a multi-million-dollar budget in innovation and has been one of the most innovative people in clinical care, how does the VA continue to lead innovation in this new era of standardized medicine? And how does the VA push out clinical practice guidelines and VA best practices, very much like what Ken just said, for traumatic brain injury, TBI, PTSD, spinal cord injury. Shane McNamee is sitting, some really innovative work on VA-specific care that is not currently standardized. We have 150 major medical centers with X number of university affiliations, 3,000 different clinics, 8 million people in uniform, and we have 130 different EHR systems currently in use. I mean, our VISTA system is really a Galapagos island of 30 of these different ones, and so that puts together some standards in terms of knowledge sharing and data sharing. Moving on, the Joint Commission, in their journey, of their aspirational journey to turn healthcare into a high reliability organization, puts out new orders. Is everyone familiar with the concept of high reliability organizations? One of the standards, one of the aspirational goals is, of course, the reluctance to simplify. And if you think about, I was looking at we do a lot of work with Navy aviation and stuff. I was looking at, in a nuclear submarine, the process to open up one pressure valve on a nuclear submarine. 57 steps. That's the concept that they bring to high reliability. I want you to imagine the clinicians in the room if we tried to do that with healthcare. They'll kill us, right? And so these are the new rules on medication orders. Are people familiar with these that came out in 2017, 2018? The new rules on protocols and nurse-driven protocols and what nurses are and are not allowed to do. With all of these, I mean, it's now getting to the point where we have the complexity of a flight deck on an aircraft carrier. Clinicians will not be able to do that. They will not be able to deliver care. We must reduce the cognitive burden on our clinicians. Otherwise, we will be introducing new safety issues as they get so stuck juggling all of those issues. The patient who is standing in front of them, we are already hearing this from our clinicians, right? The sort of global, I'm spending more time looking at the monitor than I'm looking at the patient. They have to. The average primary care physician has 75 different clinical pathways that they have to manage. And Dr. Ginsburg, how many pages is the one that you developed for the ADA? You said 60 pages?
The ADA stands are 120 pages. 120
pages just for diabetes. I can't memorize that. I simply can't do that. And so the implementation of these is going to be more and more challenging. We must create tools, engineering tools, to reduce the cognitive burden for these individuals so that they can provide timely, efficient, effective, patient-centered care that is safe for me, our veterans, of course, but to all of us. I mean, I'm getting care myself. I want to make sure that the care that I get or my mom and dad get. It really is just that simple. Is everyone familiar with the new radiology appropriate use criteria that have come out? Show of hands. So most of you, good. So the PAMA Act of 2014, at the time that a practitioner orders an advanced diagnostic imaging service for a Medicare beneficiary, so if they're a Medicare recipient, the clinical staff under that direction will be required to submit some sort of clinical decision support mechanism. If you do not show proof that you've implemented some sort of clinical decision support tool when ordering a radiology study, Medicare won't pay. The VA is moving in this model too, and I would argue this is the implementation, full implementation within the next 18 months. This is going to be the new standard. I would argue that this is going to be the model for CMS. It certainly, I will tell you, will be the model in all likelihood within the VA, again, not official policy doctrine, for lab ordering, specialty referral, and procedure requests. That is the imperative that has moved me into this space, and that's how I got involved with this. And that's how I got involved, Mr. Rubin, because we are trying to manage specialty referral and be good financial stewards while not inappropriately withholding care from our veterans. We want to make sure that they get the care that they deserve, and we want to make sure that they're not getting the care that they don't need at the cost to the American people. Just as a side, I was looking at some standards. Oh, whoops. This is the Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Institute. These are the people that are trying to disseminate and implement all of these guidelines, right? The hundreds of guidelines that were on the AHRQ warehouse. And they talk about the science, and just if you just Google, how to disseminate and implement stuff. This was one of the slides, a slide that I took from one of their slide decks. If you notice, these are the leading experts in dissemination and implementation. They have no engineering solutions. This room and this community has no voice at this point in time, to my knowledge. I have been working in this space for 4 or 5 years, and up until 5-6 weeks ago, when was HIMSS, I really didn't know very much about this organization or this standards community. I sat on the documents committee for the American Thoracic Society, implementing guidelines and publishing guidelines for several years. I was a grade fellow, and at no point in time in the last 6 or 7 years was I ever introduced to this community. There is a very severe silo problem that I see that needs an imperative, and I'm very excited to hear about the outstanding work of some professional societies, Steve, and I'm really geeked about this, and full disclosure, gynecology does pay half my mortgage. My wife is a gynecologist at the University of Michigan. That's not in my disclosures. And this I feel like what we're doing here is building the mother of all sippy cups, and I hope that that's not an oversimplification, and I apologize, but I'm a big fan of it. And so the big question is for all of those clinical people, how do we make dissemination and implementation of clinical best practices easier? And how do we take it out of this? How do we eliminate the bottleneck? As we eliminated, again, this is definitely not official government policy, but I am a believing Muslim, and I believe that one of the miracles was when we took the Word of God out of the hands of a select people and we were able to put it in the hands of people. And we did it this way. Does everyone know what this is?
Gutenberg Press.
The Gutenberg Press, right? So how do we take the power of this knowledge and put it in the hands of people and create truly patient-centered care and reduce the burden of operational implementation of guidelines, reduce that latency that Mr. Rubin was speaking about with RPIW, Rapid Process Improvement Workshops. How do we standardize control arms for clinical trials? If you can standardize the control arm for a clinical trial, then you reduce the number of people that need to enroll in a trial, eliminate beta error, lower cost and quicker time to completion of studies. This was a really big issue with some of the big critical care trials. How do we standardize pilot testing within facilities? How do we link process measures and quality outcomes? How do we say the quality metric is X, we are not achieving our KPI, and how do we do the deep dive? Can we reduce the burden for all of that? And how do we achieve therapeutic equity and not just equality by providing truly customized, individualized patient care in a standardized process? How many people got coffee or some breakfast downstairs at Panera? None of you, I would imagine, got the same meal. But the processes to build those meals, the processes to build those coffees are highly standardized. You know what you are getting regardless of what Panera you walk into, even if none of you order the same thing. I myself like a latte with hot milk, mostly whole, with coffee and not espresso, and no sweetener. That's right. Panera's got it. It's saved in an app. I can hit it, and I get it every time, and it's mine. And that's awesome. And how do we create standardized, in quotes, individualized care? That, I believe, is sort of the clinical and quality imperative. Again, I apologize if this is an oversimplification. I hope that I did okay on time, and I think we have time for some questions. Thank you.